Okay, let's start.
Спасибо. Well, thank you all for coming on a Saturday in Easter. My name is Reiss. I apologize for the American accent. I was born in Texas. I'm actually a German citizen, and considering that we're in St. Petersburg, I guess I should apologize for that too. I live in Copenhagen, Denmark, so my first language is actually Danish. And since I've been listening to Russian all morning, I thought I'd do the rest of the presentation in Danish. Because, jamen det er kun retfærdigt, at vi gør det her. Altså, I ved, hvordan det er, når I skal lytte til et andet sprog, som folk ikke forstår. Forstår I, hvad I mener? Ja, selvfølgelig. I griner, og alt er... They understand Danish over here. They apparently... Over here in the cheap seats, you're not getting this at all. All right, we'll go back to English. I'll try to speak slowly. That's probably my biggest problem. And the slides are in English, but I hope to have these translated so you get them in Russian when they're posted on SlideShare or somewhere else. I also have some bonus material at the end if you find it worthwhile. I want to tell you a little bit about this incredibly stupid title. I submitted this to a conference in the United States. And of course, the United States, it all has to be marketing, and we have to sell it. So I wanted to talk about user experience strategy. They said, no, you have to say something that is like really catchy. So we came up with the secret sauce that defines the pixie dust. Now, you're Russian or Belarusian, and you're probably saying, what the hell does that mean? So, secret sauce, that's what you put on barbecue, okay? So, like ribs, that's the secret sauce. Pixie dust, this is what the business community wants us to sprinkle on top of our crappy product and make it better. They don't really understand what user experience is. They say, we've heard user experience is really good, so just do whatever you do. Now, the thing is, secret sauce is real, and I will give you the recipe at the end of the presentation. No, seriously, those are my ribs. Pixie dust doesn't exist. That's fake. So let's talk a little bit about user experience. This is the way a lot of my clients look. And come and do your stuff. The problem is, where do you start? What do you do? And perhaps the biggest question is, what is user experience? There are a lot of different definitions out there. Most of them are very academic, and they're not actionable. There's nothing that says, all right, this is how I start. This is what I do. So I'd like to explain a little bit our definition of user experience and how we use it at my company, Fat Ducks. We consider it a series of interactions between people, devices, events. Is it hot in here? Is it cold? We're all having an interaction with the heat. Am I speaking loud enough? These are all interactions where I can say hello, and we have a personal interaction because I just touched the young lady in the front row. These are all interactions. Are you comfortable on the chairs? These are interactions. So people, devices, and events. So let's take a look. Well, what is the user experience at St. Petersburg? How many of you are from St. Petersburg? All right, so there are an awful lot of people who are not from St. Petersburg. Okay, I'm here kind of as a tourist. Now, if I'm here on a vacation, my experience is different than it would be than if you live in St. Petersburg. For example, this is a stock photo, by the way, because it was snowing when I came. But you come to the airport, lovely, probably have a nice hotel, decent room. Again, this is a stock photo, there was no champagne in my room. Go out to a nice meal, find food, and if you like to make food, which I do, maybe you go to the food hall and buy some special ingredients that you can only get in Russia. All of these are interactions. Perhaps I'm going to go to the ballet. St. Petersburg certainly is one of the cultural capitals of the world. Might go to the Winter Palace, St. Isaac's Cathedral, go to the Fabergé Museum, perhaps visit the Aurora or rent a car and go out to Petershof. This is the kind of thing that an outsider would do coming to St. Petersburg. But, beautiful city that it is, if you live here, you probably have a slightly different view of what the city is about. Your experiences are different. Maybe this is your apartment, or perhaps you're renting a room, or you're living in a student dormitory. Maybe this is where you're going to have your lunch. And you don't go to the fancy food hall, but you go there if you're going to buy your groceries. Yes? Okay. You have a co-working space, perhaps? Who knows? You don't go to the ballet, you go to nightclubs. And the architecture you see probably doesn't look like it does along the Nevsky Prospect. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a different version of St. Petersburg. And I'll tell you, this is not the way the Winter Palace looked yesterday. So my point is that user experience is incredibly situational. When we talk about, oh, we want good user experience. Well, good for whom? I mean, for this fellow standing up in the corner, yeah, this was probably a good experience. For the guy lying on the mat, not so much. You can chart out all these touch points, and that gives you an actionable definition of user experience. And we talk about user journeys and touch point analysis and service blueprints. All of these build on these interactions. Now, the Americans, I guess because they're all capitalists, everybody wants to own user experience. And so we have the content strategists and the information architects and the interaction design. Everyone, no, I'm the only one who knows anything about user experience. And because people get tired of user experience, they talk about customer experience. I found this a couple of weeks ago. Oh, it's not this or this or this. No, user experience is a subset of customer experience. How many of you agree with that? No, thank you. I'm among friends, I can feel that, thank you. It's a bullshit definition. And let me explain, thank you. I'll be here all day. If you're a customer, that implies a financial relationship. If you're a user, you have a relationship with the product or the service, and there's a big differentiation. Now, in Western Europe these days, you cannot have a presentation without pictures of cats. So, no, it's just the way it is. You have a stupid title, and then you have cats, and everybody loves it. This is Gus the cat. And Gus the cat used to eat Whiskas. That is his bowl. And this happens to be lamb with peas. Now, that's something that appeals to me. I think that lamb with peas sounds like a very nice thing. And you can see there's some peas in there, little green things. The problem is, I'm the customer because I buy the cat food, but I generally don't eat the cat food. Although I did taste it. It's not bad. With salt, it's okay. But the cat spits out all the peas. Cats don't like vegetables. Some do. You probably have a cat at home that eats things that are green. But most cats lack an enzyme that allows them to metabolize chlorophyll. So they know instinctively that they shouldn't be eating green stuff. So they will chew on your houseplants, but they're not going to swallow it. Now, if anyone had asked the cat probably would have said, oh, can't you make mouse-flavored cat food? Or small bird-flavored cat food? I mean, that's the kind of thing that Gus used to like. He's the user, I'm the customer, and there's a big difference. The point is, all users are customers, but not all customers are users. And this is an important differentiation. So, my view of user experience is simply that it's an umbrella. We all design user experience. We can be content strategists or service designers or interaction designers. We can be developers. We're all designing user experience, but I'm not sure that any of us can truly call ourselves user experience designers. And this is also why no one group can take ownership of user experience. Am I talking too fast? Or are you all doing well? Content strategy. Oh, CX is customer experience. A term that we kind of hope will disappear at one point. So where do you start and what do you do? Well, a lot of app developers, somebody gets a great idea and say, wow, this could be so cool. And they design it, and it's a great success. And then the business people come along and they say, yeah, well, we need to build on our momentum. We're going to do it again. Does this sound familiar? Yes? No? Okay. So we've got, hey, this could be so cool. The problem is, if you don't have a target, you're going to get into trouble. How do you know if you're going to hit it? What are you going to aim for? And that's the purpose of a UX strategy. Now, strategy and tactics are two words that also get confused. So let me just spend a moment to explain the difference, because it's critical. I'm going to start with a war story. This is the way Europe looked in September of 1942. September of 1942 was important because Marshal Stalin was fighting back the Nazis on the gates of Moscow, but the British had just thrown the Germans out of North Africa after the Battle of El Alamein. Marshal Stalin appealed to Churchill and Roosevelt and said, please, start a second front because I need time to mobilize Soviet troops so that we can push back the Nazis. And in 1943, in fact, they did open a second front because now they could come from North Africa over to the island of Sicily. Now, taking Messina was a strategic decision because that is the road up throughout Italy. And this did a lot to save Russia. So open a second front, that's strategic. Taking Messina is strategic and tactical. So the generals, goals and strategies, the officers, strategies and tactics, and the sergeants, the tactics. Or as they often say, how many of you have been in the army? Like fat guys behind rocks and skinny guys behind trees. That's tactics. All right, so let's make this personal. What happens when it's you? Let's say you're going to go to a conference. Which conference you decide to go to, or why you decide to go to a conference, that is your goal. What event is strategic, and how you choose your sessions. If you choose to be in here, or in the next room, or somewhere else, that is a tactical decision. Why, what, and how? Those are the differences. And often I hear from the business community, oh, we want you to work out a strategy. But they don't want strategy, they want tactics. It's important that everybody understands the same terms when you're at a business meeting. So, flipped a little too quickly. Usually a company has a business plan and they may have a business strategy. Maybe one document and maybe two documents. As user experience designers, which of course none of us are, we need to ask for these documents and read them because that is going to dictate what our user experience strategy is going to be, and the strategy is going to dictate what kinds of products we develop. It's really not more complicated than that. The business strategy will include financial goals, market development, and probably some kind of an action plan. Now, the UX strategy, that's going to have a value proposition, what's in it for the customers, some generic guidelines, general guidelines for what user experience is. What is our definition? And a governance structure. Who is actually going to do the work and when? So let's look at a couple of these things in detail. The value proposition, you need a clear definition of what the company wants, and you can get this from the business plan. How does that relate to user experience? What is that user experience actually bringing to customers? And finally, an explanation of how your company is going to continue to give good user experience when they build product number 2, 3, 4, whatever. So the generic UX guidelines, a clear definition of what you mean by UX, and I just gave you one saying, look, it's these interactions between people, devices, and events. A decision model that can help designers decide, okay, is this a good thing or is this a bad thing? Often at meetings, whenever you hear somebody say, someone might want this feature, you know you're about to hear a really bad design decision. That's not the way we should be deciding what we're going to put in our product. And a simple list of do's and don'ts. What kinds of things will we accept or not accept? So let's look at these individually too. So we already talked about these interactions. What we can do is we can coordinate the interactions that we can actually control. We can regulate the heat in this room. We acknowledge interactions that are beyond our control. We can't stop it from snowing. But we can reduce negative interactions. So we put on a coat, or we make sure that there are shelters at the bus stop, and so on. These are all ways of avoiding negative interactions. And the decision model is very simple. I mean, there are things you can do something about, and there's stuff that you can't do anything about. There are things that are important to the business, and there are things that are, screw it. Where are you going to start? Yes? Top right, exactly. Exactly. It's really not more difficult than that, and the business community understands this, which is very nice, because a lot of the explanations of user experience, they don't get at all. They think, oh, no, we're just going to sprinkle our pixie dust. That's not the way it works. Yes, no. What are you doing? Are you making your product easier to learn, to use, more enjoyable? Are you encouraging sharing and other kinds of usage? Is it supporting the value proposition, which you got from the business plan? The more specific you can get in this document, the better. And this is a document that's a living document. You need to go back to it every month or 2 months and revise it to make sure that it still represents the kinds of things that you're building. You got to keep the solution simple. You don't want to make it, you don't want to overthink it. That's a very dangerous thing to do. And you've got to keep it flexible. There really is no one right way to do this. I realize we're not into questions, but do you have any questions at this point? Or is this just like boring as hell? No questions? Not yet. Okay, well, moving on. I want to show you a film clip. How many of you know an English movie, British movie, called Love Actually? Okay, great. How many men know Love Actually? Okay, good, honest souls. This is, I want to play you a short section of this. This relates very much to service design, but also to the user experience. Now, this gentleman, who you may recognize as Professor Snape from Harry Potter, that's Alan Rickman, who died last year, unfortunately. Now, he is in a department store in London, okay? Now, he is married to Emma Thompson, who is very boring. But Alan has a very hot secretary, and the secretary wants to have an affair with him. And Alan can't quite decide whether he wants to have this affair or not. He's in the department store. His wife, Emma Thompson, is someplace else. So he's a little nervous, and he's looking at the jewelry. And so if we could start this. Okay, and a little sound. There is sound. Not that it's violently important. You can already see that things are going to go wrong. He just decided he's going to buy that necklace. That's where he makes the decision that he is going to have an affair. But he's not particularly comfortable with this decision. And he's asked, all right, do you want it gift wrapped? Yes. Now he's looking for his wife. He's nervous about the whole thing. He knows that he's doing something that's morally wrong. And our friend Rowan Atkinson is measuring and saying, oh, just the jiffiest of a jiff. It will take no time whatsoever to wrap this. Can you continue to work on the sound? Because I do need it for the second cut. So suddenly there's a bag. Oh, it's not just a bag. It's not just a bag. Now, oh my God, he even has something. He even has a holder to put this damn thing in, and okay. And he starts to make a potpourri. And this goes on forever. And Alan Rickham is getting more and more worried about this and ends up not buying it at all. And my point is, we have to keep our solutions flexible. If we say, this is the way we're going to do it, and it's the only way we're going to do it, we're going to get into trouble. How many of you have been reading about, oh, I'm going to stop that. You can find this on YouTube, okay? How many of you have followed the problems with United Airlines? Okay. United Airlines has a very inflexible policy. They said, we will give up to $800 US to get somebody to leave the plane and take a later flight. The law says that they can give up to $1,300. But the frontline personnel was not authorized to go any higher or to do anything. The man would not leave. And so somebody, stupid, decided to call the police, who beat up a passenger. They have internal policies that do not allow people to make sensible decisions. You have to understand that for every rule, there are going to be exceptions. And if you're doing service design and you don't empower your frontline personnel to make these decisions, it's going to go wrong, one way or another, just as it did with Mr. Bean here, who continues to gift wrap. And now I'll take the advertisement off. I want to give you a couple of case stories. One is for something called the AI Factory, Artificial Intelligence. Now, this is a company in the UK, horribly ugly website. But they produce the engine that is built into a lot of artificial intelligence games, okay? So they have gin rummy and solitaire and chess, whatever. Now, I have never talked to the people at AI, but this is what I think their strategy is. Number one, the business goal is to become the world's best supplier of artificial intelligence engines. The business strategy is to showcase their engines by producing some of their own games, simple board games like solitaire and whatever. The value proposition, our engines make gaming more realistic and exciting. Does this all sound plausible? Yeah. And so their UX strategy is, we're going to create the feeling that people are playing against real people rather than against the machine. So far, so good. So if we look at the games, this is Euchre, a French card game, and you can see that I can choose, well, this is Don, who's my partner in this game, and Bill and Sarah, and all of these people have different rankings. I mean, there's some players that are better than others, and you can choose who you're going to play against. They also have personalities, different ways of playing. It's really very, very clever. And you can see, yeah, I can choose almost the same people for, this is Hearts. So I'm playing against these people. I know exactly how Bill is going to react to certain things. I know what Rob is going to do, and so on. Now, this is chess. What is wrong with this picture? Exactly, I'm playing against the CPU. So everything that they do in the board game or in the card game division is apparently siloed and is not being given to the other strategic games. It would be easy to fix it, but this strategy has not been communicated. I don't even know that they have a strategy. I made this up, but I think it's plausible. I'll give you another example. This is the Mark Hopkins Hotel, which is probably one of the 3 best hotels in San Francisco. And a couple of years ago, I needed to go to the United States. We had some business problems. I had to fire a very, very senior member of my team. And so I spent a few days in a whole bunch of cities talking to clients, meeting with potential clients, and so on. And I rented really nice rooms in really nice hotels because that's where a lot of the meetings were held. So the Mark Hopkins is very fancy. My plane is delayed. It's raining. I get there. I'm late. I'm wet. I have to go out and hold a talk for an advertising agency. Man, I get to the room, lots of pillows, as always, and a box on the bed. What do you think the box contains? Chocolates, of course, because that is what there's always a sweet on the pillow. Well, I quick change my clothes and dry my hair and run out the door again, and it's a really long evening, and it's been a really long day. And all I can think about is, I'm going to get back to the hotel, I'm going to crack open the minibar, I'm going to have a cognac, and I'm going to eat chocolate. Now, if I was the Mark Hopkins, I'd say that my goal is to become the premium hotel in San Francisco. And my strategy would be to draw on business partners to make the Mark Hopkins services even more appealing. Mark Hopkins has a long tradition of great service on which we build in new and creative ways. You can hear I used to be an advertising copywriter. This is the kind of crap I wrote for years. So the UX strategy would be make the guests feel special by making the hotel's superior service more personalized and more visible. Sound reasonable? Okay, so I get back to the hotel. I get the cognac. I open the box, and what is in the box? A card from Bloomingdale's saying, well, if I drag this car halfway across town, they will give me a 15% discount. And not a piece of chocolate in the entire box. So I'm pissed off at Bloomingdale's, which is otherwise a good store. I'm pissed off at the Mark Hopkins, and I'm wondering if the Mark Hopkins even knows that Bloomingdale's is just gift wrapping a certificate. I mean, how stupid can you be? This is a tremendous letdown. If my expectations are here, and you come in with service that's down there, there's going to be a problem. On the other hand, if people's expectations are down here, I don't have to be a whole lot better before people are very, very satisfied. These are the kinds of things that you can build into your strategy document. They fail when they're not communicated correctly. We saw that with the AI factory, where clearly the people who are designing chess haven't talked to the people who are designing gin rummy. Shouldn't happen. You've got to get senior directors involved. You know, we talk about empathy for the user. Yeah, that's fine, but if the senior management doesn't understand if they think we're still going to sprinkle pixie dust on stuff, you're going to run into trouble. And you'll find often that the senior management has some very, very useful opinions as to where they want their company to go. But these are not necessarily communicated down to the third tier of managers, which is often where we come in to the design process. The strategy is vague or unclear. Strategy doesn't ensure measurability. If you use touch points, you can measure those. If you just say, oh, happy customers buy more. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's not a good way to get repeat business. And worst of all, UX, user experience, becomes a buzzword because nobody really understands what it is, and so next year somebody comes along and says, oh, no, it's customer experience. Oh, yes, well, we have customers, so we know what those are. That's good. Customers are better than users. We don't want that to happen. These are 10 commandments that were, for the most part, written by a friend of mine, Ronnie Batista. I helped, but Ronnie, you're getting credit for this, all right? So just shut up over there in New Jersey, okay? You've got to respect the user's needs. Don't feed your cat peas if the cat doesn't want peas. Don't worship digital. User experience is all around us. That's often a problem. There's a lot of literature out there about UX strategy and so on. It's all something that happens on a screen. That's a very, very small part of user experience. There's a very talented woman in the United States, Leah Booley, who talks about the user experience team of one. And this is what happens when there is one person who gets it, who understands user experience within an organization. And he or she needs to convince the rest of the organization that what they're doing is important. It needs to be the user experience team of everyone. Everybody needs to get involved. The people who empty the trash cans in St. Petersburg, which is a remarkably clean city, because the trash cans get emptied. Whoever empties those trash cans for the city doesn't necessarily think of themselves as part of the user experience team, but they are. St. Petersburg is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. The trash collector probably doesn't realize the role that he or she is playing. Don't use jargon and buzzwords. Speak in ordinary terms. That's what the business community needs. You got to look at the big picture. What are all the touch points, including the ones sort of on the edge of your journey, or what is happening between two touch points? That's also pretty important. How do people get from A to B? The Fabergé Museum, for example. There are no signs on any of the exhibits, but there is a number, and then you can look it up in the catalog and you can see what it is. I appreciate the fact that the guidebooks are available in 20 languages, but it would certainly help if it was at least in Russian and English, so that I didn't have to keep referring to the guidebook. I went to the museum to see the art, not to keep my nose in the guidebook. Somebody is missing the bigger picture here. You've got to measure user experience. If you expect people to believe what we're preaching, you got to be able to show that there is an improvement. I think what we do is incredibly important, and we should all earn twice as much as we do. Yes? Good. You can only do that if you can show them the money. Don't reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of things that work and there are a lot of things that don't work, and these are fairly well documented if you read the blogs and if you follow along the various discussions in the community. Keep it simple. And remember, the company does have a value proposition. So respect that. Very important. Basically, if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. That's kind of the message. And that's why we have a user experience strategy document. And on that happy note, this is my recipe for barbecue sauce, which I promised you at the beginning. Good user experience, I recommend it. And spasiba. Now I can see we have a couple of extra minutes, and there's one question that I always get, and that is, well, but how can you talk about user experience in these broad terms? User experience is a new term. It hasn't been around very long. No? No? User experience has been around since the dawn of time, since it's Easter. How many of you know the story of the wedding at Cana from the Bible? Do you know this at all? You do. It's in the Gospel according to John. And John says that Jesus Christ turned six vats of water into wine. That's a good miracle. I mean, that was his first miracle. And honestly, anyone who decides to make alcohol as their first miracle, that's pretty good. Now, granted, he did this to convince his disciples that he was the true Messiah, but you think they didn't drink it at the wedding? Of course they did. Now that's user experience. If you read the Bible, you don't have to believe in God or Jesus or any of this, but the stories are very good, and they're all about user experience. It's very interesting stuff. I want to share some bonus material with you. We're applying old thoughts to new technologies. And the thing is that a lot of the words that we use, they've also, the things have been around for a long time, even though the words are new. Let me show you. So, there you go. There's a 50-year-old wearable. There's a 150-year-old infographic. This is Napoleon's army marching to Moscow. And that's how few troops he had when coming back. Nobody should invade Russia. They're stupid if they do. Excuse me? In the winter. It's always winter, dear. Believe me, it's the middle of April, and you should look at my shoes. This is a site map. This is for a railroad. And what do we have? We have hubs, and it's a site map, for goodness sakes. There's a card catalog from the Sorbonne from 1794 or something. That's a search engine optimization project. There's a 250-year-old knowledge map. Linnaeus' taxonomy, 300 years old. There's a content inventory. This is what was left in a will by some man who died in England in 1600. Personas. This is from Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. There you go. There's a 5,000-year-old wireframe. There's a 15,000-year-old storyboard, for goodness sakes. All right, here we got the hunters, and there we've got some beast, and hey, everybody, it's all wonderful, and we're going to cook it on the fire. Yeah, this is a storyboard. Now, I realize you all think that Apple invented everything under the sun, and they didn't. Now, I hope we have sound on this next one. It is from a Hollywood music.
What color?
Yeah, go along. Yeah, hit it.
All trimmed in baby blue?
Okay, then I'll be right behind you, cause let me remind you that I'm going shopping with you in the basement. I'm going shopping with you. Well, here we are. Where do we go first?
There.
Would you like these?
Would you like to try them on?
There is nothing new under the sun. This is Busby Berkeley from 1935. So thank you all for being so patient. I'm here to answer questions. We still have some time. Happy Easter. Thank you. Do you want questions here? Yep.
Eric, thanks for your presentation. My main question would be how you actually make those people to provide you with business plan and strategy.
Yeah.
How you actually start, how to make this process, because usually they just want, like you said, pour some pixie dust over and that's it.
Usually if you ask, they'll give them to you. And if they say it's secret, then you need to ask them, well, why do you have it if it's secret? I'm the one who needs to use it. If you created a tool that we're supposed to use so that we can also design products, then we should also know, in what direction you want to go. Now, it may be that there are certain pages of financial reporting and other things that they won't share with you. That's all right. But the stuff you need probably will be available if you ask for it. The problem is most people just don't ask for it.
You said we're dealing with third tier management,
Yeah.
not with the top. And usually they don't have on this level what you said, communicate.
Well, sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. But it also is a question of making your client on the third tier look good. Give them a quick and an easy win so that they'll introduce you to the higher levels. Now, I have the advantage of being an old man. So I do get invited to meet CEOs and others. It's not always easy if you're in your 20s to get that kind of access. I certainly didn't get it when I was in my 20s. But you have to pursue it, and you have to figure out, well, what's the best way? And sometimes the person on the third tier, your client, hasn't thought to ask for this either. They're just doing what they're told to do.
And the second part, when they don't have the strategy, but they have successful business, they want to improve or scale up.
There is no successful business that doesn't have a business plan. It's as simple as that. I'm not talking about a one-shot wonder because they happen to produce one product, but if a good, serious, viable business will have a business plan. You can't get money or funding from the bank if you don't have a business plan. That's the first thing the bank is going to ask you for. So it's there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More
Other
questions?
I scared everyone. You're all hungry. You all want to go to lunch. That's it.
Just first of all, to clarify, is it easy to get the access to the account?
My God, you look exactly like the guy who just asked the question before. That's amazing.
Like running the cats. Let's imagine the cats. It's like the end users or customers. How often they refuse to give you access to them. And what do you do?
Well, you ask them, do you want me to do my job, or do you not want me to do my job? I mean, often there'll be a lot of research available in the company. Usually the marketing department has it. Usually it's not particularly useful because they're asking the wrong questions. But otherwise, do guerrilla research. You can do a lot of research just by going online, looking at competitors, doing an analysis, doing a SWOT. You can do a lot of stuff just from your desk, and you can do it, take 5 minutes out of your lunch hour for 2 weeks, and suddenly you've got some good research.
One more.
Yeah?
So doing this for so long...
You've got competition, so let's make this one short.
All right, sure. So what's actually still difficult for you doing this for so long? What still makes it really hard for you to kick off or make it work in UX design?
It's generally that a company says, oh, but we've never done it that way. And so they want to continue doing what they've always done, in which case I say, well, that's great. Why did you hire me? What are your expectations? What do you want me to do? Do you want me to make the sales curve go up, or are you satisfied with the way things are? Did you hire me just to sprinkle pixie dust, or do you want me to make a change? If you want me to make a change, that's fine. If you just want me to sprinkle pixie dust, I'd rather save my time because there are other people who value what I do. So I'll fire clients. Well, I have a choice. If you're working internally in a company, then you're going to have to plod away at it. It's not easy. But hopefully these slides will help you at least think about the kinds of things that you should be doing within your organization. I'm going to go over here just to say hello. I haven't forgotten you. Hi there.
Hi. First of all, thank you very much for coming and inspire us here. I would like to ask, how do you define users, and how do they differ from customers? I mean, user experience. We know.
All right, the user experience of a customer, if I'm buying Whiskas cat food, how easy is it for me to spot the product on the shelf? How easy is it for me to open the package, to pour it into the bowl? Do I get my fingers messed up? These are the kinds of, and what is the price? These are the things that me as a customer look at. The cat doesn't care about any of this, as long as it gets into his bowl. So my point is, not all customers are users. Or I'm sorry, not all customers are users, but all users are also customers. I didn't say that right. You understand what I mean. I mean, the cat doesn't buy the cat food. He's a user. I'm also a user, but I'm also a customer.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your lecture. Could you show us one example from your experience when your job improved the product?
Right. I don't know whether you could hear. The young lady asked me if I could come with an example from a recent project that shows how we've improved something. The problem is that we have non-disclosure agreements with most of our clients. And the thing is, clients don't want you to go and broadcast how terrible they were before you came in. But we've done simple things such as, all right, well, one client I can talk about is Nokia. This is the old Nokia when they were selling feature phones. We convinced them to improve the quality of the content, to build a better shared frame of reference with the people who were clicking on these things. For example, they had these gallery pages, and all the phones, they were all feature phones. They all looked alike. Why should I choose one phone instead of another? And we said, no, you've got to come with information. This is a tri-band phone. This is a dual band phone. So, oh, no, all our phones are tri-band. I said, no, they're not. The crap that you're selling for 15 Rand down in South Africa is dual band. You've got to let people know ahead of time where they can go. Help them. Channel them into the right product. And so by redoing the taxonomy and redoing the content, their sales went up remarkably. So that I can't talk about. And then they went out of business. But well, that was due to different things. There are examples, and there are case stories on the internet that you can find. I'm just really hard-pressed to come up with stories that I can share with you. I'm not trying to be cagey, but I mean, it's simply a contract. Our clients don't want us talking about them. I'm sorry. We'll meet over a beer later, and then I'll give you the dirt.
Hello.
Hi.
You have mentioned that involving senior directors and to make the strategy clear, it's one of the core. And yeah, it's fully true. But my question is, you have just few chances to make it happen. And final presentation is one of them. When you invite senior directors to present the UX strategy, how you identify for yourself and that the strategy is clear and that it's already ready?
You can't wait for the final presentation to talk to senior management. If you do that, you're not going to get it approved. It's as simple as that. They have to be able to see their business strategy in the documents that you're presenting. You've got to talk to them as soon as possible.
You have a final vision about what you will do with the company, what you propose, you express.
Right, well, you propose it, and then they come with comments, and then you revise it, and you maybe go through 5, 6 iterations before everybody's happy. But it's important that they're on board. Now, one story that I can, oh, she disappeared. I scared her off. One story that I can share without mentioning any names. We were asked to bid on a very large project in the UK. And I was kind of wondering, well, why did they choose Fat Ducks in Copenhagen? I mean, you can't swing a cat in London without hitting somebody who does user experience. But we looked at it and we thought, well, it will be interesting and we'll bid on the project. And we asked for background information, and they had a slide deck that was prepared by some British consultants 3 years earlier. That was a bloody brilliant UX strategy. And they had personas, and they had this, and they just had everything. It was magnificent. And before, I have to sit down and write a 40-page proposal for these people, I called them and said, look, why didn't you ask these people to complete the task? They did a fabulous job. We can't do it better than they did. Oh, well, senior management doesn't really understand. Okay, well, anyway, so I wrote the 40-page proposal, and we got the job. And the first thing we did was interview the 4 senior directors of the company. And it turns out that not one of them understood why they had spent £500,000 on this document. They did not know what a persona was. They had no idea why all this research had been done, because nobody had ever talked to them. So you've got to talk to senior management as soon as you can, and it can be done. And you don't have to have a white beard. There are other ways to do it. You probably don't want to come in torn jeans and your AC/DC T-shirt. There are rules to the game. No, I mean no offense. I mean, we're at a conference. This is my work clothes. We've got to look the role. We've got to look respectable. We've got to make our client on the 3rd level look good, because they're the ones who are going to get credit for having brought in these incredibly brilliant user experience people, which we all are, yes? Is there anyone here who is not incredibly brilliant? No, of course. Oh. Why are you not incredibly brilliant? Excuse me? You're being modest. That's the problem. Well, modesty is okay when you're talking to the business community, because they all like to think that they're the smartest people in the room. But here, no, we're all equals. We're all smart. We're the ones who care enough to show up on a Saturday during Easter to attend a full-day conference. Think of the thousands of other people who are working in our industry in the Russian Federation who are not here. Is it because they didn't care? Is it because they already know all of this? Boy, I'll tell you, if you think you know it all, you've got a problem. There's a French philosopher, Gilles de Faupibrac, and he said, "Cease not to learn until thou cease to live. Think that day lost, wherein thou drawest no letter to make thyself more learned, wiser, or better." I think those are good words to live by. We got to learn something new every day. I learned something by being here with you. I'm delighted to be back in the Russian Federation. I haven't been here for years. I'm delighted to see the changes that have taken place in St. Petersburg. I hope to get back to Moscow sometime. Maybe even go to Belarus, to Minsk. I'd love to go to Minsk. I learn things all the time. We're sharing the conversations in the hall, but that's also why we're smart people, because we are able to learn and we haven't decided, no. Yes, I have 20 years of experience. Yeah, do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year of experience that you've repeated 20 times? There's a big difference. Okay, we are definitely out of time at this point. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Erik.